In business, the smallest decisions can massively affect future earnings. A big decision can make or break established corporations. From failed acquisitions to disastrous gambles, here are the worst business decisions ever. In 1995, Broadcast.com was founded by the now famous entrepreneur Mark Cuban. It was a live streaming service ahead of its time, but still became popular. In 1998, they went public, and over 100 of its employees became instant millionaires. The next year, Yahoo bought Broadcast.com for $5.7 billion, which is how Cuban achieved billionaire status. It was all looking good, but Broadcast.com soon fell in popularity. Their audience moved on to better services, which is why Broadcast.com is now defunct. Yahoo spent $5.7 billion on a worthless website. But it's worse than it seems. The acquisition distracted Yahoo, which allowed Google to take their position as the dominant search engine. Gerald Ratner is a businessman who shows us there is such a thing as bad publicity. In 1991, he was running a jewelry company, which was known for its low prices. On the 23rd of April, he gave a speech at the Institute of Directors, where he was asked how his company could sell their goods at such low prices. In response, he said, "Because it's total crap." He meant that as a joke, but it made people realize how bad their products really were. The company's value immediately fell by over £500 million and almost forced them to go out of business. In the corporate world, making a big mistake is now known as doing a Ratner. In 1957, the Ford Motor Company introduced the Edsel. It was built to be the car of the future and a commercial success, but it wasn't. Sales figures fell short of targets. In total, they lost over $250 million on the Edsel. In today's money, that's over $2 billion. But is that the cost of experimenting with new ideas? Not necessarily. Market research told them the Edsel wasn't going to sell in big enough numbers, but they ignored market research and introduced the car. I hope you remember Blockbuster. It was a massive video and game rental service that collapsed a few years ago, barely surviving bankruptcy. Blockbuster now have just 11 locations. At their peak, they had 9,000. Their customers gradually moved on to other services like Netflix and Hulu, leaving them without the need of Blockbuster. On the surface, it seems like an inevitable decline for Blockbuster, but it wasn't. In the early 2000s, Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix. The cost was $50 million, which does sound like a lot, but Netflix is now a multi-billion-dollar company, and Blockbuster is barely surviving. In 2013, Yahoo bought Tumblr for $1.1 billion in cash. A lot of people were shocked by the deal, because although Tumblr has a lot of users, it's a platform which is difficult to monetize. It doesn't make any money, so for Yahoo to spend over $1 billion on it was a big mistake, and 3 years on we can see how damaging it was. Knowing that Yahoo recently had to sell itself, they could have put that $1 billion to good use. Sony claimed to have sold up to 80 million PS3 consoles. That sounds impressive, but on each unit they lost money. Unit production was too expensive, as each console included a Blu-ray DVD player. It was a big gamble on Sony's part, that the value of people owning Blu-ray players would outweigh the cost of selling PlayStations. The idea was people would buy Blu-ray DVDs for the next few years, allowing Sony to dominate the home video market. This did happen to some extent, but most people don't even buy DVDs anymore. Their gamble relied on the health of a dying market. Walmart haven't always been the world's biggest retailer. In fact, just a few decades ago, they were struggling to keep up with Kmart. Kmart even inspired the name Walmart many years before. In the 1980s, Kmart had the choice between reorganizing their business to make it easier for their customer, or they could launch a huge marketing campaign. They chose the marketing campaign, but at the same time, Walmart chose to reorganize. As a result, Walmart grew in popularity, and Kmart took a massive hit. They lost ground to Walmart, which has never been regained. Star Wars wasn't always a huge franchise. Like all others, it began as just an idea. George Lucas created Star Wars, and before the entertainment industry realized how big it would be, they allowed him to keep all rights to Star Wars merchandise, and they did so in exchange for just $20,000. That deal made Lucas a billionaire, and Star Wars merchandise continues as a massive source of income today. In 2012, the total value of the Star Wars franchise was over $30 billion. For most of the 20th century, Kodak was the dominant camera brand. Their situation now is a lot less stable. Kodak played a role in creating technology which enabled smartphones to have their own cameras. Before long, almost every phone was made with a camera. The problem was that Kodak didn't profit from this in any real way. Also, people stopped buying physical cameras, which they had no need for, and they declared bankruptcy a few years ago, which they did survive, but not by much. Google wasn't always the dominant search engine. There was Yahoo before them and AltaVista before them. There was also Excite. When Google was a struggling young startup, Excite had the opportunity to buy it for just $1 million. It was 1999, and Excite executives saw little potential in Google, so they passed on the offer. Google then lowered the price to $750,000, and again, Excite turned them down. Today, Google is among the most wealthy and powerful corporations, while Excite is a hollow shell of what it was. Excite saw massive decline during the rise of Google.